Hey, I'm Eternal Savvy.
And I'm Warped Lamp.
Welcome to The Twisted Lantern, a podcast about a single game that we're a little too interested in, Kingdom Death Monster.
So whether you're interested in game design or just want to hear two people talk for a while, this is a good place to be.
So, without further ado, let's light the lantern. Okay. So welcome. This is episode 1 of our Kingdom Death podcast. So I suppose it's pertinent, first of all, to introduce exactly who we are, in case you haven't encountered either of us before. I'll let you do the honors first of all, Lamp.
Oh, me? Well, I'm Warped Lamp of twitch.tv/SurpriseRunRPG. Tell your friends. Ordinarily, I play proper tabletop role-playing games. However, due to some fun circumstances, I got the opportunity to play this one with Savvy a couple times, and boy, oh boy, is it just the best.
It's real good. There's a reason that we're doing this podcast purely around Kingdom Death Monster. But I'm Eternal Savvy. I have my own channel as well, which you'll find in links below. But it's twitch.tv/eternal_savvy. And while I do run tabletop RPGs in a similar way to Lamp as well, the majority of what we do is tabletop games like Kingdom Death Monster and visual novels. So if that's your deal, then check us out. That's pretty much what we do. But a little while back, we encountered this game, Kingdom Death Monster, and after playing it for a while, we kind of discovered that we were really
obsessed with it.
Yeah, absolutely obsessed with this game. Lamp and I in particular, it's just something about it really clicked with us, and we suddenly found ourselves playing it just at any given opportunity. Outside of stream, as well as on stream, we just couldn't get enough of it. I think there was a period, God, how much was it? Like, there must have been a good solid 2 months of us just playing it like at least 4 times a week.
It was getting unhealthy.
Yeah, to say the least, because it was to a point where if one of us was unavailable to play off stream with each other,
we both had our own games we were playing by ourselves.
Yeah. So needless to say, we're pretty damn enthusiastic about this game. So we're assuming that you've shown up to this podcast either because you want to just hear us shoot the shit for a while.
Yeah, you either like the game or you like us.
Exactly. Or maybe you've just encountered Kingdom Death and maybe you're doing a little bit of research on it. I know that I certainly was looking up a thing or two about it before I started to play it. And we want to use this as a good jumping off point for maybe getting to know a few things that you might not necessarily encounter just by picking up the game. So for those who are somewhat uninitiated, Kingdom Death Monster was a huge tabletop game that was kickstarted quite a while ago, and it was an overwhelming success. It got funded, but it is a massive game. There is an absolute butt ton to it. There's not just the core game, but there is expansions to it. There is just like and when I say expansions, I'm talking about just like extra monsters that you can fight, entire extra modes of play. It's an absolutely monstrous game, no pun intended. But so I guess one thing that we like, the rules you can find out on your own if you pick up the game or load it up or whatever and just go through the rule books. But one thing that we want to go through first of all to begin with is kind of like the general feel that this game gives and essentially to give you the ability to decide whether or not this is actually something you'll be interested in. So I guess we'll start off relatively simple. Lamp, what would you say is like the main feel that you kind of got off of just, I guess, the kind of the surface level of this game, because that's pretty important.
So at the surface level of the game, like just looking at it, it's like very grim, very dark, and I very often heard it described as being extremely brutal, and all of these things are true.
Yeah, one of the main draws, I suppose, is what you could say, is that it has got that very unforgiving and ruthless difficulty level.
Yeah, it's one of those.
Yeah, it's the darkest dungeon type, the hardcore XCOM
The
type.
Dark Souls of tabletop games, if you will.
God, fuck that phrase. But yes, fuck that phrase. But yes, it is to some degree the Dark Souls of tabletop games. So yeah, I would absolutely immediately say that if you are into something like Darkest Dungeon, you will very much be interested in the aesthetic of this game, as well as the mechanics, because there is a lot going on there. And the general themes are, now this is somewhat of a warning for people who might not be into this. The themes are designed to be quite like they're meant to be quite grotesque. There is a lot of like they don't hold back when it comes to like describing how brutally people die, and they don't hold back when it comes to the kind of maladies that your characters are laden with. And what's more, there is somewhat of an existential horror behind it as well.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, so that is something to be aware of, is that if you're not all about like kind of the gore and more I guess the more grimy side of grimdark, then maybe don't.
It might not be a great fit. I can't even immediately deter those people too much though, because like I'm one of those people. I'm not about like grotesque gore at all, but like I still love this game.
Yeah, no, it's definitely be wary of it, but by all means give it a try. Yeah, I think you had a good comparison in terms of, because I think it's a good idea to talk about what the gameplay you're looking at is going to be like, because the surface level of Kingdom Death, when you're just looking at like the box and the descriptions, may not necessarily convey exactly how in depth the mechanics.
Yeah, no, because it's got a lot of meat to it. This is like a real game, like a real one. No, it's definitely like a healthy mix of like a resource management game, like XCOM. It's very similar, but it's also got a lot of Monster Hunter in it too, because you're hunting gigantic badass monsters, and it's awesome. Yeah,
that is the main thing, is that the one of the things that they push forward is that, you know, there are these big monsters that you have to go out and hunt if you want to survive, and that is the main draw of the game. One thing that you'll learn pretty much immediately upon diving into what I consider to be a fantastic tutorial for the game, the thing that you'll find out is that there is 3 very distinct phases in this game. There is the fight phase, the showdown phase, which is where you actually kill the monster. You actually like go through the process of rolling them bones and seeing if you manage to take it down. There is the settlement phase, which is what we're talking about when we say resource management, because you get resources and you have to decide what to do with them.
Yeah, no, there's like a lot of resource management, a lot of base building going on. It's good stuff.
Yeah, no, the base building is another side of it. It's a different take on it. It's not quite the same as you might find in XCOM, where you simply just like choose what you're making and then set resources to it. There's a bit more randomness involved. But and then the third phase is the hunt phase, which is where you decide what you're going to go out and kill, and then you have to actually get to it. And that's something which I find quite cool, and why it's quite reminiscent of Monster Hunter, is that you don't just arrive at the fight. You have to actually go through the process of finding the monster.
Yeah, and it is a process. It's a process where a lot can go wrong.
We've had a lot of bad stuff happen. And in that vein, another, I guess, a warning, but also a recommendation. This game loves tables. It loves rolling on tables.
Yeah, no, there are so many random tables in this game, it is not even funny. Or maybe it's a little bit funny, honestly. Because it's a running theme where, like, every time anything happens, like, alright, here's a random table, if you roll a 1, you're dead. It's like, really? Interesting.
Yeah, we've had more than a few jokes when playing it, of just like, oh, I bet there's a table for that, and then sure enough there is, and sure enough, rolling a 1 is dying.
No, they put a skull on that die for a reason.
yeah, that is true. I forgot about that. Right, yeah. So those Are there any like other major similarities that you'd say in terms of like a game that you might have picked up already that might kind of endear you to this?
I mean, there's also like I know we kind of shit on the Dark Souls comparison there, but like there's a little bit of Dark Souls going on here, just given the amount of like huge dudes and armor.
Yeah,
and also just in the way of like all the unspoken lore that's going on.
Oh yeah, yes. Let's actually touch on that really quickly. This setting, I will say this much: as you get to know the setting. There is not any like lore books or anything like that. There is not any like sections where you just straight up read like about the world or something. It's all done through events. Whenever an event happens in game, whether that is a new beast showing up or some result of a random table or an item, you will get a short little. And I mean like a short story. It'll be like a couple of paragraphs at most, and you learn more about the world through that. And that is very Dark Souls. Dark Souls doesn't outright tell you anything that they're about, and this game is very similar. But if you have any sort of affinity for the kind of storytelling that Dark Souls gives, then I think that you will absolutely adore this game, because the images that come to mind and the implied interactions of various aspects of the world that come to light through the events that you read through just make it so interesting. I can think of, I mean, there's been several points where like we've read through something and like the implications of a specific creature's actions or the implications of how an item interacts with, you know, your survivors just creates this absolutely wonderful, like, oh fuck, does this mean this with that other monster that we were fighting earlier?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of oh whoa, like little things going on.
Yeah, absolutely. That being said, don't go into this game expecting it to be a role-playing game.
No, absolutely not.
I think that's would you call that a pitfall? Would you say that's something that I think a lot of people might try doing? Or
it could very well be a pitfall if you're used to traditional role playing games, because this definitely isn't those. Although there's like a handful of like events that encourage you pissing around at the table, it's pretty much like bound to that. Like you're not supposed to take it much further than that. Like there's the occasional event that's just like have someone ramble for a while, and like yeah, no, that's about all you get as far as role play is concerned.
Exactly. There is a far heavier reliance on mechanical storytelling. The stories that you get out of this are less like, you know, character moments and being in character. Absolutely none of that, actually, now that I think about it. And much more to do with the stories that you gain from like the actual game playing out itself, the dice that you roll and the effects that the survivors that you control have on each other. It's kind of a bit Nuzlocke now that I think about it.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Like you have all these guys with stats and you're giving them names, but you're not supposed to get attached to them.
Yeah, it's oh man, do not get attached to the characters too early.
It's really fun because there's a very real mechanical reason as to give your characters names. You're just strictly at a disadvantage if you don't.
Yeah. So the idea being that like if you give your character a name, they suddenly have a drive to live. They have a willingness to survive because they believe that they are someone. Of course, the game doesn't say that. We said that. That's what we draw from it, because the actual thing that it does is it just says, if you name your survivor, they gain a survival. And survival is a mechanic in the game where the survivors, as they are called, the survivors can spend survival to do things like dodge attacks or or block attacks, or run faster, or attack again. So it's quite literally a measure of a character's drive to keep themselves alive. So the implications are what I just said. They feel like they matter, so they have a willingness to survive. That's what it is implied, and that's what you're going to get out of this game.
Implication.
Yeah. Like, it never outright spells out that, like, oh, picking up this item is... I'm going to make up some bullshit now. Oh, you picked up this item and you can't comprehend the totality of its power, so you're driven mad. It doesn't say that. What it says is when a survivor obtains this item, they gain 10 insanity. You know? Mm-hmm. Like, it's
and like that means whatever you think it means.
Exactly. There is little chunks of lore, as we said, but it's down to how much enjoyment you get out of mechanical implications. Hey, Lamp.
I'm Lamp.
If you were to identify an attitude that you needed to have when going into this, what would you say it is?
A willingness for failure.
Yeah. Please expand more on that.
Yeah, no, I will. So, like we joked about before, or rather didn't joke, just mentioned a hint of joke. There's a lot of random tables in this game where you can just die. And that's just going to happen. It's an inevitability in the game. It's a deliberate part of the design. And you really can't afford to get mad about it, because then you'd be mad too much.
Yeah, that was something we learned, I specifically learned the very hard way, because I made the horrible mistake of getting attached to a character simply because I'd already named them. And sure enough, I came across a point where they just straight up became useless as a character. It wasn't even death. They just became useless as a character. And I was very keen on them becoming like a hero of some kind within the game. And I got pissed off about it.
Yeah, no, it feels like the game robbed you, but it wasn't a deliberate act of malice. It was rather an act of true ambivalence. The game does not care how you feel.
Yeah. If by all means, we're not telling you not to form attachments of the characters.
Oh, absolutely do.
Yeah, that's half the fun, to be honest. But yeah, the attitude you need to go in with is just do not get mad, because just don't get mad, you know? Don't get that attached, because it's just going to harm your enjoyment of the game. If you're attached to a degree where you're glad to see them succeeding, but you are able to laugh at your failures, and you're able to laugh at when a table screws you over, then you're gonna really start to pick up on why people who pick up this game really like it and get obsessed with it like we do. The other side of that as well is that this is very important in my opinion. When you get into this game, how do I say this? You are going to feel like, to begin with, that this game is bullshit. And you're going to feel like half the shit it throws at you is just impossible to overcome. And it's going to feel like, how the fuck am I meant to do that? Because, like, this seems completely undoable. But you need to go into this with the attitude that the reason that certain things are there is because they are goals for you to be able to play the game with enough proficiency that you can overcome those obstacles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, like you can tell just from like our own experiences. Like we've only played the game a handful of times, but like encounters that are previously like unsurmountable, like the butcher feels like a really tough hurdle to overcome. But like in all of our private games, we've never had like any trouble with him whatsoever.
Like you can actually see on if you go onto my Twitch channel, which is where we've played this game live. We've got 2 runs of it so far. Our first run, which is very, very much us getting a hang of the game. In that game, the Butcher, who is a Nemesis encounter, and if you look into the game, you'll of course learn what that means. But the basics is Nemesis, they show up at your doorstep, and they force you to fight them. So you can't avoid them. And the Butcher's the first one. And in our first run, he's the bane of our existence, because every time he shows up, he just guaranteed kills some of our survivors. But in all of our private games, he's trivial.
It is literally night and day.
It's so crazy that you just start to reach a point where you've learned enough about the game that you just go, oh, that's how you deal with it.
You deal with it by having any amount of equipment by that point.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, man. So yeah, general advice, really, really, don't just be willing to fail, accept that you will fail.
Yeah, no, because, like, a lot of the bad things that happen to you are going to be your fault just because of a lack of game knowledge, but there's also just always going to be the looming factor that the game can and will completely screw you.
It's not something... And this is kind of the beauty of the game, and this is why we love it so much, is that you don't just hit a point where you suddenly have the key to the game and you know how to get over any of the obstacles it throws at you. We've been playing this a lot, and we can still only confidently say that we can overcome probably the first 6 years without trouble.
Yeah, no, that feels like a very good estimate. Like,
yeah.
We, like, even in our private games, we still haven't been able to, like, reach the end point, and maybe that speaks more to our own ADHD about it than it does to, than it does to the actual difficulty of the game. But, like, in a few of those runs, like, the writing was very clearly on the wall. Like, even though we felt like we were doing good, we were actually doing a really bad job.
Yeah, that's the other thing as well, is that this is something that it doesn't really spell out either. And now that I think about it, I probably should have said this earlier. Another thing you absolutely need to know about the game, this is a legacy game. And it doesn't really spell that out. And it doesn't really have a lot of mechanics that happen as a result of you playing the game multiple times in a row. A game like Pandemic Legacy, I think it's called, that specifically has, like, its whole draw is that there are multiple mechanics that show up only upon having played the game or had a certain number of runs. And KDM doesn't have mechanics like that. Not major ones.
No, it only has a few small things, and really they only affect the beginning of the game.
Exactly. But they've purposely done it that way because it's not trying to give you benefits or detriments from playing a certain way each time. The reason that they include a way for you to track how many times you've played it is instead to enforce the idea that you're not gonna know how to deal with the obstacles first time, second time, third time round. It's like, what was it? Lamp, you said earlier, like, you see the writing on the wall after a while.
Oh, you sure do.
Yeah, like, once you start to pick up on the language of the game, you will consistently get to, like, year 12 in the timeline, and suddenly you'll just be like, we are not gonna get to endgame. Or, we're gonna get to endgame, but we are not going to be doing well.
Yeah, no, we're definitely at that in one of our runs, where we're just living in fear of fighting level 3 Manhunter. We won't win. We won't defeat him. And even if we do, we have like 7 guys. Like, it's over.
Yeah. It is encouraging. It encourages you to keep trying. And honestly, you're not going to enjoy the game if you don't want to keep trying. I'm straight up going to say that. If you aren't willing to... If you pick up this game and you're like, I don't think it's really my deal, you, first of all, are not going to get the full scope of it on one run. And second of all, you are not going to enjoy the game. Because if you aren't willing to ask yourself, how could I play that better this time at the end of a run, then you're not going to be able to, like, kind of fully experience the entire breadth of what it has to offer you.
Yeah, no, every failure reeks of new possibility.
It is quite wonderful in that way. It's what got us hooked. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, because like we were doing the second run, and we were like, wow, this is not going. Actually, no, we were like, this is going amazing, and those were our exact thoughts. And then we did our private game, and it was like, wait, we were doing so bad in that other game. What's going on?
Yeah, it is very. How do I say it? It wants you to try more. Just please, for your own sake, try again.
Like, despite everything that, like, the game's energy might put forward, like, it really wants you to keep going.
Oh, that's a point. One of the things that you need to know about the feel of this game as well, to see it, to know whether or not this is something that you want to do. The game, it's so Darkest Dungeon, I feel, always tries to put it in your head, even at high-level play, that you can just kind of get ruined at any moment. And
I feel like that's kind of the Darkest Dungeon's detriment, because, like, after a certain point, like, you absolutely have a complete handle on everything that's going on, but the game never lets up.
Yeah, and it will pretend that you are still in major danger. Major danger. It will pretend that you're still at, like, death's door at every moment, even if you've waltzed into a low-level fight, into a low-level dungeon with some of your best dudes just to pick up some new gold, you know? Like, Kingdom Death initially feels like that. And it initially seems like it's trying to do that. Like, it's trying to just be like, oh, don't get too attached to anyone. And it is like that. But the thing which you gotta realize as well is that it's actually got a lot of places where it wants you to feel like an anime as fuck badass. And you can even see it in some of the art and some of the items. I mean, for God's sake, one of the items that you can make is straight up the sword from Berserk.
Yeah, no, this game's very anime.
It's very, very anime. It has a lot of places where and here's the caveat, if you can get to that point, you will have an anime badass on your team. And you will be tearing through some of the monsters that you are having trouble with, and it applauds you for that. But the difference
at the same time, there's always the game has its own comeback feature where there's always the looming possibility that you will suddenly and unceremoniously lose your anime badass.
Yeah, very true. That is a very specific card that we will talk about in a later episode that is specifically targeted to that. But the game, that is also why we very much encourage not to get mad over its indifference towards your characters, because the mechanics it puts into place are specifically there to remind you might have an anime badass, but you should only be enjoying them while they're around, because you having an anime badass on your team is not yes, I have now finally obtained my tool to run to endgame with. It's more of a outstanding, I have a little leeway for a year or two.
Yeah, no, I can live comfortably for a hot second until he has a heart attack and dies.
Oh, yeah. So be wary. I guess be wary. Be wary, but also just be acknowledging of the fact that this game likes throwing bones, and they feel really good when it does throw you a good bone.
Oh yeah, no. Like, the game, I feel like it would be bold enough to say the game is equally unfair to itself sometimes. Like, you can get completely screwed, but also, like, so many good things can happen in a row where you can completely trivialize large portions of the game.
Yeah, kind of in a hilarious fashion sometimes, even.
Yeah.
We've encountered one or two places where you just pick something up for free, and there's no reason you can't just pick it up, and it just means that your next 2-3 years are just actually a cakewalk, you know?
Yeah, no, it's all just gravy. It's all peaches and cream.
Oh, right. Okay, so let's move on to... I guess we'll move on to our next point now.
Not that we have a bulleted list.
No, not at all. Not okay. For context, we know that we're bad at staying on topic, so we have ourselves a bullet point list.
That's been helping so much.
Oh man. Right. Okay. Next point. Who shouldn't you invite to play the game?
Well, like we said before, this is not a role playing kind of game. Like it's like not to undersell it, like it's got a fucking awesome oppressive setting, and like if you wanted to play a role playing game like in the KDM setting, you absolutely could, and honestly, I would fucking adore that.
Oh,
but
same.
But at like out of the box, the game really doesn't facilitate it. So if you're someone who's super into role play and that's where you get all your fun, it's probably not a good fit.
It's certainly very heavy on rules, and if you have it physically, it'll be plain as day the moment you open the box, because there are like a billion rule books in it. And with that said, there was one specific thing I came up with when we were talking about this, is that if you like rules, you will love this game. But if you like getting rules right, you are going to hate this game. Because the amount of stuff that you have to keep track of is
absurd, to
say the least. If you go onto our channel on our playthroughs, specifically the first one, we get an actually fucking comical amount of rules wrong. And it's not even like, sometimes it's not even, oh, we got it wrong because there was an interaction between two rules that we couldn't pass. Sometimes it'll just be a rule that's written on a card and we just get it wrong.
Just a fundamental misunderstanding of game. And that's what happens when you have four people who don't know how to play the game playing the game. No, even when it was just us two, where we're like, yeah, we know how this game works, we were still getting things wrong. We found out so late that you're not allowed to move through your own guys. That's not allowed. You can't do that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, quick tip. You can't move survivors through each other. We didn't know that. But yeah, that's actually something that we will probably make at least a section of an episode on, is rules you may have missed. Something like that. And for that reason, I guess a closer way of saying it would be, if you like mechanics, you'll love this game, but if you like rules, you'll hate it.
Yeah, that tracks well enough. But just a quick fun bullet point about the game is that if you do have people who like to dispute rules, the game does have its own built-in feature to stop that from happening.
Yep.
Yeah, which is referred to as the rule of death, where if you have a rules dispute and it cannot be resolved, pick the one that is worse for you.
which granted, there's still been a few places where we haven't followed that, but hey, it's your game table, you know. But it does advise that if you have a conflict of rules, pick the one that detriments you, which gives you, I guess, a general idea of the feel that the game is going for as well. Something to be careful of as well, and I guess we'll move on to this as well, of things to be careful of. There is going to be... We kind of narrowed it down to two very generalized groups of the kind of people you're going to find playing this game. One group of people are going to be the type of person who just want to show up and have a fuck around every week or so, and just play a game for the sake of playing a game with your friends and shooting the shit and laughing about what happens. And then there's us.
The sweaty tryhards of Kingdom Death Monster.
Yep. The ones who find the game and go, wait a minute, this has mechanics that we can perfect. We need to do that. And let me tell you, both legit ways to play the game. You cannot have both types of people at your table.
Yeah, At least you can't have both people at your table and expect a seamless symbiosis, because no, there's gonna be a divide as clear as fucking day as soon as you get to a settlement phase.
Oh my god, yeah. It is the settlement phase, really, isn't it?
Yeah, no.
That's a very good point. Yeah, because it's hard as well, because even during the showdown phase where you're fighting the monster, it's very possible for people like us to get very involved in, you should move here, which defeats the fucking point of having multiple
it defeats
people.
the point of having multiple people playing the game.
Which is why it's fucking outstanding when you have only people who are all about like the optimum strategy at the table, because all of a sudden it's not about, oh, I'm running this character. It's just, you are in charge of marking down what's happening to this character, but we are all cooperatively deciding what we should be doing with each of their turns.
And between four people who are playing the game mechanically, we're bound to know all the rules at this point. Wrong.
Oh my god. Yeah, very true. But on that sentiment as well, try not to worry too much about getting things wrong.
Yeah.
It's, if only because it's going to happen. Just, it will. Just, I generally run by, not just in Kingdom Death, but in any board game or any TTRPG, anything like that. My rule is consistency is more important than getting it right. So if you rule something one way and you realize that, you know, you should have done it, you did it wrong, and it severely impacted like a big thing that happened. What's more important than going back and trying to fix what you did like a fucking 2-3 hours ago or even a week ago or something? What's more important is just making sure that you keep doing it the same way, because that way at least you're keeping it all consistent within your own session, you know.
Yeah, no, I guess it depends on how much you value consistency. Personally, I more overvalue doing it the right way and just moving on from it, like, oh, we did it wrong, well, let's do it right now. But agree to disagree.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, there you go. That's exactly the kind of that's just down to opinion in the end, isn't it? Because I can absolutely see the value as well of just accepting that you did it wrong and playing it right from now on. Definitely don't go back and try to correct like some big integral.
Yeah, no,
though.
like what happened. Like don't retcon things. Like this game's not fucking worth that.
Yeah. And that I think brings into another point about things to be careful of. And we will get into this into a big way in the second episode. But you are going to be tempted to. You're going to be tempted to treat the survivors as individuals.
What were you thinking?
What were you thinking? Something that's going to help you out a lot is if you recognize from the very beginning that everything in this game is a resource. Because
they can be gained, they can be lost.
Absolutely. And if you focus too hard on, oh no, wait, if we'd done that rule this way, this character would have survived and we'd still have them. Just don't. Just that attitude is treating it as if they're like somehow fucking important compared to other characters. It's not the case. You just have survivors which have numbers on their sheet, you know?
And a name that you may or may not have been responsible for giving them.
You know, sometimes when you roll 2 1s in a row and die, you just have to accept it.
Sometimes Manhunter kicks you in the dick and you roll 1 twice.
We'll get to that. I'm not salty. God. Right. I think... Yes, I think we're going to move on to the next point now as well. As we're talking about things that you should realize going into this, you can play this game single player.
Oh, you sure can. I don't recommend that. I don't recommend doing it out of the box, but I do recommend doing it.
There is, I guess, some degree of like a I don't want to say like is it stigma? The idea of like, oh, it's frowned upon or whatever.
Yeah, that'd be a stigma.
Yeah, there's a stigma surrounding like the idea of, oh, what a loser playing board games by himself. But this is one of the rare cases where like it's just legit. It's just like legit. It's just super legit to go in and play this game single player. Because if you think about it this way, it's the equivalent of just fucking booting up XCOM, you know? Like,
yeah.
It's just playing a single player game, and it's when you properly get into it, it really lets you kind of start to discover a lot more about the game.
No, absolutely. And if you've reached the point where we're at, where both of us are obsessed with the game and know a lot more about it than the general rabble that we play it with, it is so gratifying to be able to be in control of everything.
Yeah, it's. Don't get me wrong, I do like playing with other people as well.
Absolutely.
And but it's a different attitude, it's a different feel, it's a different approach when you're playing with other people, you know. Playing by yourself, and if you're the kind of person who's playing by yourself because you want to try and figure out optimal strategy, it is very satisfying to be able to just try things without people suggesting that we do something because we know it works, because like this game wants you to try and fail, as we've said multiple times. So sometimes you do just need to go with what sounds bad, but hey, who knows? You know?
Yeah, no, because getting yourself into ruts is how you miss out on perfectly valid strategies.
Yeah, we legitimately at one point we were playing every single run that we were doing by picking up basically specific innovations and specific pieces of gear, specific things during the settlement phase for our base. We would always like stick to a very strict, we get this first, we get this next, and like if we can't get this, we'll get this, right? And as a result of that, we locked ourselves out to a lot of parts of the game, because one of the mechanics that this game very strongly very strongly pushes is the idea that if you have picked to play a certain way, outcomes of certain tables will be altered, and it's not always positive. Sometimes you have a bigger chance of something fucking you if you picked say an innovation that's purely beneficial to you. So yeah, be really open to it. You're gonna encounter shit where you're gonna be like, oh fuck, this set of armor's dope, we should always try and pick this up. Don't listen to yourself. Try picking up other armor sets.
Don't always do anything.
Yeah. Like, every run should be an opportunity for you to try out another part of the game that you didn't get to try out last time.
That being said, it's hard to convince yourself away from survival of the fittest.
Yeah. There are a few things that you will pick up after a couple of plays where you're just like, why didn't we pick this to begin with? Oh, man.
But that just comes with knowing the game. It goes back to what we said before, like, the more you play it, like, the more you know. And this game's got a pretty steep learning curve going on.
Oh, no fucking kidding. There is...
It's almost to, like, a really meta level how much you need to know about the game. It breaks the fiction a little bit of being a bunch of cavemen who like playing in mud, but simultaneously know everything about how a phoenix will attack you.
Yeah, like...
But if you don't, you're screwed.
Yeah, actually, yeah, no. Let's fucking... I'm gonna fucking make that official. Big piece of advice. The game is very fun if you let it surprise you, don't get me wrong. It is expecting you to metagame.
Yeah.
It is, because here's the thing, right, is that I think the most obvious example of this is when you are fighting any given creature, whether that's a nemesis or a quarry, whatever it is, you build their AI from a set deck of cards, and while there is a level of randomness as to which cards get picked, because there's several decks that you pick from, it's it's always the same. There is always the same 3 decks that it's picking from, and it tells you how many of each, like, deadliness level of AI it's picking. So, like, for low-level creatures, you'll just have basic and a couple of advanced. And for high-level creatures, you'll have the same level of basic, more advanced, and, like, a legendary card. And
sometimes all of the legendary cards.
Oh, fucking hell, yeah. But but the thing about that is that that's not done, like, as some... It's not done because fuck it, why not? It's done on purpose. They have that done that way so that if you learn the common AI cards inside of a creature's deck, then you could start, like, being like, oh, we've seen these cards come up. There's a possibility that, like, or, like, we've only seen 1 advanced card come up, and we know that there's 3 in the deck, and there's only 4 cards left in his AI deck. There's a high chance he could fuck us in a moment, you know? It's expecting you to have that level of awareness of, like, what you are doing in order to be able to react accordingly. One very good example is, let's say... If we're taking this from the perspective of, like, oh no, we wouldn't know what's coming next, right? You would just run in, just every turn you would just run in, you're not paying attention to the cards that the monster is drawing, and you just keep going, and you just keep getting fucked by the same card. You keep getting fucked by a card.
And then you get eaten by a goat.
And then you get eaten by a goat, and and you're just like, oh man, this is really shit, this game is really brutal, and it really fucked me. But then you realize you could have just kept track of what he was drawing.
Count the damn cards.
Yeah, card count that motherfucker. Because then all of a sudden you're just like, okay, like fucking Swallow is in his deck now, and it's on top of his deck. Hey guys, let's back off this turn. You know? Just do it. Metagame the fuck out of it.
Absolutely. Because the game really does facilitate it. Like we said, like, counting cards is a completely viable option because, like, the monster AI deck, that doesn't get reshuffled. Like, count the damn cards. They're in the same order. It's great because it lets you know exactly what you can do, but it also adds a level of fear because... There's been more than a couple of occasions where we've managed to remove all of the wrong cards from their AI deck. And all of a sudden, the only card they're drawing every turn is their worst card. It's the most dangerous card they have. And all of a sudden, all of our survivors have forgotten how to wield their weapons.
Oh, man. It is fantastic in that way, and I'm sure you can tell just from the way that we are referencing things like that. You're gonna pick up and have a lot of experiences of, like, just really absurd situations.
No, absolutely. Like, lots of waiting for goats to tire themselves out, or lions getting in AI loops.
Yeah. Oh. And that leads into something else as well. So there is actually 2 versions of this game. There is the original version, which is now known as 1.0, the originally released core game. And they have since updated it with 1.5, which makes some balance changes and fixes a couple of problems. For example, well, I'll try not to get too, like, exact on it, but there is in the original base 1.0 game, the White Lion, which is the first creature that you can hunt, the White Lion has a very specific AI card, which can be caused to not trigger if you have cut off its paw. So if you have, and I want to emphasize, that's not easy to do. You have to critical strike a very specific card in his deck. But if you manage to do that, if you manage to cut off his paw and leave him with that specific AI card, then he will get stuck in a AI loop where all he does is look at his hand and get sad. And nothing else. They patched that out in 1.5, but we've encountered that twice, and it's stupidly hard to do.
Yeah, no, so there's just a quick recommendation. Play 1.5, it's better.
Yeah, like it gives you a lot of quality of life improvements. There's a couple of pieces of gear which just straight up are made better, and they also make it so that there's actually a reason to hunt like certain higher level monsters and that kind of thing. And on that note as well, the game you can obviously pick up, physical copies of it, and there is a fuck ton of expansions. Just an absolute. It's ridiculous. It's so cool. That's another reason we like it. There is so much content to this game. But you might be looking at it and you might be thinking, man, there's a lot of shit. There's a lot of expansions, and you know what? I've got the dollar or I've got the time. I want to pick up some of these expansions, but you have no fucking clue where to start. If you're going to start anywhere, pick up the Gorm expansion, because I would say it's almost fundamental.
Yeah, no, it adds so much for what it is. Like it's another low level quarry, so you don't have to exclusively hunt lions, and also you don't even have to think about antelope. Fuck him. And it adds that. It adds all this alchemy bullshit. It's absolutely excellent.
It is just objectively a good expansion, purely because it injects more variety to the very early game. To the start of the game, it adds variety, and that is something which is very valuable, because
absolutely, because like it can get a little bit stale at the start of the game. Like if you keep failing and you've reached the point that we have where like we're always trying to play new late game strategies and failing to get to late game, if you've reached this point, the beginning of the game can get a little repetitive,
especially if you're on just core, because you will have a grand total of 2 things you can really hunt in the early game. And on the early game, you will have 1 thing you can hunt, which is the white lion, and nothing else. The Gorm lets you hunt 1 other thing, which is very welcome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just additionally, if you have the balls to pick up 2 expansions, highly recommend Manhunter.
Yep, absolutely. We will probably straight up do an entire episode on just the Manhunter, because one thing we are planning is we want to give expansion spotlights, basically. So if you are willing to wait, then by all means you can just catch our later episodes about each of the different expansions. But if you can't wait and you do want to pick this up and you want to play along as these come out, then we recommend the Gorm and the Manhunter if you want to pick up just 2 from the get-go.
Yeah, they add a lot of variety, and they're just objectively good inclusions.
Would you say Flower Knight can be included in that as well, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Flower Knight, honestly, he's one of those things that swings the game really into your favor for like very little cost. If the game's been screwing you a lot, pick up Flower Knight.
Yeah, no, very good point. So, I would definitely call Flower Knight it's not the Tearstone ring. What's the ring in Dark Souls that makes it so you don't lose your souls?
Oh, the Ring of Sacrifice?
Yeah, Ring of Sacrifice. Flower Knight is the Ring of Sacrifice of Kingdom Death Monster, because it just objectively makes things easier for you. And in that vein as well, if you don't have the ability to pick up more than just the base game, because it's pretty pricey, and actually a surprising amount of replayability in just the core game. One thing that you might not immediately go to is looking at the back of the core rulebook, and if you look in the glossary, I think it's under like alternate games or something like that, or alternate game modes, something like that. There is a point in the back of the book where it gives you a couple of different ways that you can actually go through the motions with it. And they're called stuff like Children of the Bone, the 7 Swordsman mode. They give you a lot of ways that you can just kind of try new ways of playing even the core game, and that's extremely welcome.
Absolutely. Yeah, because like a lot of them like give you. I know the Flower Knight comes with one, and his like it gives you like some more stats and like gives you access to new pieces of equipment, new mechanics. It's good. It's a good shout.
What else? What else can we cover really quickly in this first episode? Do you reckon?
Where to buy the game? That might be good.
Oh yeah, very very good point. So, you can find this, if you want to pick this up, the physical version of this, you can pick this up on shop.kingdomdeath.com. That will give you all of the affiliated links that you need in order to pick up the core game, the expansions, anything that you want from this game, you can pick up on that shop.
Yeah, but fun fact about the KDM store is that there's obviously like all the game supplements and all the expansions and stuff, but there's also just a lot of things there that are like just for fun. Like there's a lot of alternate figurines that are like wacky and like a little bit anime, like
just a little anime,
just a little bit anime.
Yeah, actually, on that note, that's a fair point as well. If you are a miniatures hobbyist, this is absolutely the game for you, because the figures in this game are actually fucking outstanding.
I've seen a few pictures of people who've like, hey man, I've painted this Kingsman, and like it's so rad to see them in color. There is a certain appeal, don't get me wrong, to the nice pure white of the figures that they give you to begin with, but seeing them painted it honestly doesn't compare.
Oh, it really doesn't. And the developers absolutely fucking know that, because if there's one thing, as Lamp mentioned, they provide you lots of packs where you can pick up alternative figures for certain things. And there's also a lot of places where they just let you buy expansions which are just, here is an armor set that you can build, and here is the affiliated figures for them. So
yeah, it's really cool. They clearly, the developers for this game clearly have like their own dorky passion for it.
Yeah, absolutely. That being said, do be warned, if you're not into gratuitous beefcake and cheesecake, i.e. very scantily clad men and women,
vis-a-vis anime,
maybe you won't be as interested. Or maybe you're more interested now.
Who knows?
Who knows? One way or another, I will say this. All of their muscles and other parts of them are lovingly crafted. They are all very, very pretty.
Yeah, no. That is another small point that I don't think we touched on, but like all of the art provided in the KDM books is fucking gorgeous.
Oh, if there's one thing that I can quite happily say about this game, it's that it has a very big price tag, but
you get what you pay for.
My God, do you get what you pay for? It is just, without a doubt, it is like the most packed tabletop game I have ever seen. I think they quote it as being like 19 or 20 pounds. And for people who are in England, I'm talking, that's the weight of it, not the price. That is 20 pounds of stuff in the core game.
It's real. God, I'm trying real hard to not just go into gush mode, but God, boy howdy, do I just love this game.
It is fantastic, though it is it's going to make a dent in your wallet, put it that way. But if you are a bit like on the ropes about it, because like the other thing is as well is that when you're purchasing a game like this, it is so difficult sometimes to pick up a big multiplayer tabletop game, because you're just like, man, am I gonna be able to justify the money I spent on it with playtime? Am I gonna have people who are actually interested? For example, a game like Scythe, I really like Scythe as well. That's another very it's nowhere near as expensive, but it's another expensive game. But that game is unfortunately just objectively better played with other people. It has a single player, but it's just not as good in my opinion. And so you kind of have that whole thing of like, may not have been worth it. But Kingdom Death is so robust, even if in its single player, that even aside from the amount of hobby crafting that you get to do with the miniatures that they provide you, even outside of that, I feel like a lot of it is worth it.
Absolutely.
Oh wow, they've got a Valentine's Day pin-up Twilight Night now. Oh, that's one hell of an image on it.
I guess a good enough point saying to mention it. Despite all the showering praise that we have given this game, there is one thing that does come down ultimately a lot to taste. It is a little bit crude sometimes, and by sometimes I mean a lot.
Yeah, a lot of the time. So obviously a lot of it, like in the examples of expansions, it's optional, but even in the core game, opening up the rule books, you are going to see a lot of very naked people, and they are very naked and sometimes also covered in gore. So be careful of that. But to give you an idea, one of the expansion items that you can buy is a nightmare breast pump.
It sure is.
So, to put your mind at ease in case you're thinking, oh wow, this sounds like this is created by a bunch of like really, like misogynistic people or something. When you actually look at it, it's very clear that they're highly aware of what they're doing. They are specifically poking fun at it at a lot of points. And you know what? There is plenty of dicks out in the game as well. So it's kind of they don't treat the men any differently. There is a lot of ripped dudes with their dicks out. So
it's just how the game is.
Yeah. Oh my god.
But it is not for the weak of heart.
No, absolutely not. I believe one of the colloquial names for the game that was going around when it was getting kickstarted was Tits and Death.
That's not inaccurate.
Not inaccurate.
But I feel like that's giving a severe lack of credit to the amount of butthole going on the Phoenix.
Oh yeah, he does have a butthole, doesn't he? Yeah.
It's mechanically very relevant.
God, I can't believe that we could legit fucking say that. Yeah, it is mechanically relevant that the Phoenix has an asshole.
That's where I'm coming from when I say the game's a little bit crude.
Yeah, absolutely. There is like legitimately points where you are actually going to you are going to read the phrase "you've been sucked into its anus." So just
And like some of you might think, wow, is this really the game I'm playing? And then other people might say, shouldn't that be cloaca? And you're both right.
Oh my god. So yeah, that is another thing to be wary of as well. That is for certain. Oh man. I am trying to find the price of the core game, actually. Just because I can see that the expansion volume 1, which contains 12 expansions, which is the Dragon King, the Dung Beetle Knight, the Flower Knight, Gorm, Green Knight, Lion God, Lion Knight, Lonely Tree, Manhunter, Slenderman, Spidercules, and Sunstalker, is $777, and that's the expansions.
That is pricey.
It is pricey. Yeah, so the core game is looking at $400, however, so it's definitely a steep price tag, but
if you have like even an ounce of the passion that we have for this game, you can absolutely get your money's worth out of it.
Yeah, like one thing to consider is that with a video game, for example, obviously you're getting like a big value for money or whatever, but you are interacting with that game in one way. With something like Kingdom Death, not only are you just inbuilt straight away getting replayability, but if you are a hobbyist, you are getting so many more hours of enjoyment out of this than just playing it. It is really, if anything, it's just a fantastic collector's item, really.
Absolutely.
Right. Is there anything else that we want to cover before we end?
No, honestly, just if it sounds like this is like even like 1 ounce your cup of tea, like I can't recommend it highly enough. Like I'm like we're doing a damn podcast about it and we still can't recommend it enough. Like please play the game.
Absolutely. It is something. It's a different experience. I've never encountered a board game like it.
No, me neither.
With that, thank you very much for tuning in to this very first episode of the podcast. We will be having more coming up whenever we are able to, but we intend to cover all sorts of things. But we're going to try and kind of go through this in as natural as a progression as somebody encountering the game for the first time might need. So we'll be going over the bit, like strategy to begin with. Then we'll be running over specific things like the settlement deck, the innovation deck, specific monsters, and as we said earlier as well, we intend to do expansion spotlights as well. And sometimes we might just shoot the shit about fun experiences we've had in the game.
Like we said before, we're really passionate about this game, and if you and we weren't understating the amount of content there is in it. Like if you don't think we can have a podcast with multiple installments dedicated to just this dang game, you are so wrong, and we are so ready to prove you wrong.
Yeah, you're gonna see there is a lot to fucking talk about, and it is not something that can be contained within a single episode, as you have seen. So we will have more to come for you. So with that being said, I suppose it's time that we douse the lantern.
Indeed it is. Until next time.
Until next time.